Welcome to Tales from SYL Ranch Live, where everyone is entitled to my opinion. And I'm Bill Stone. Tonight on Tales from SYL Ranch, we will of course have the usual weekly Lancaster County, Nebraska virus statistics for where I live. Talk a bit about how the CDC, oh thank you massa, has lifted mask orders for the fully vaccinated people. We'll have a call with cryptocurrency expert J. Marshall Presnell, probably not as long as last week, regarding Elon Musk having intentionally tanked cryptocurrency. We will have a discussion of why your children want you dead. We will also talk about the Colonial Pipeline and the dangers of monopolies, anything else I can think of, and anything else that you want to talk about. This is, of course, a live stream, so you're free to talk with me about anything that you like in chat. You can ask me any question, whether it's political, social, the virus whose name I can't mention because on the YouTube side I might get the video banned, Civil War II, or even things pertaining to science fiction, fantasy, horror, superheroes, and other related genres. I'm happy to answer each and every question in as much detail and as truthfully as I can. There are some personal questions that I won't talk about, but pretty much anything else is fair game. I'll get to as many of my viewers as possible on all three platforms, YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook, that I am simulstreaming to. If you say something, I'll call out which platform you are on and what the question is so everybody else can see it. And basically, I don't want to run much longer than 3 hours because I'm an old man and I have lower back arthritis. And after 3 hours in this chair, my lower back arthritis starts to kind of flare up. Seeing some activity over on the YouTube side. Drop a dude saying, "Hey, Bill. Sorry, I have to put my glasses on for this. The title of today's broadcast is a little dramatic, isn't it? Clickbait much? Clickbait is my life. It's a little dramatic, not as dramatic as you might think. Not as dramatic as you might think. I had sort of an epiphany about this, and it's not quite as dramatic as you might think. So to answer the question that nobody asked, what are the current Lancaster County virus statistics for where I live? As always, in my description box and on the Twitch site, it will appear after I'm done. I always source this. It is the City of Lincoln, Lancaster County Health Department, and some of my stats, as usual, are not quite the same as the Lincoln-Lancaster County Health Department, but this is because I'm using a more accurate count of the county's population than they are. The statistics this week, as usual, our population remains roughly the same at 324,216. Deaths are up 1 at 233, 1 from last week. As always, for comparison, I like to note that the number of people who died of heart disease in 2019 in Lancaster County was 485, which means that over about 1.5 years, coming up on a year and a half, the number of people who died of the virus remains less than half the number who died of heart disease in only 2019. Total Lancaster County confirmed cases is at 31,214, which is up 183 from last week, continuing a downward trend of increases. It peaked a long time ago, has been slowly going down ever since. Statistically, however, it is the same minor increase as last week. The number of positive cases classified as having recovered is 28,525, which is up 409 from last week. I don't really know what this classification means, but given that there are only 233 deaths, I guess that leaves about 2,689 people in some kind of weird Schrodinger's cat-style limbo as both simultaneously dead and not dead. Total number of completed vaccinations is now at 136,257, which is up 16,335 from last week, making the percentage of the population that has been vaccinated 42.027%, up 5.039% from last week. However, as always, having tracked this as long as I have, given our other statistics and rates of increase and decrease, the vaccine really has yet to have the slightest effect. Deaths as a percentage of confirmed cases is now at 0.746%, which is down 0.002% from last week, statistically identical. Deaths as a percentage of population is 0.718%, which is up 0.002%. That's what one death is in this county. Statistically, this is roughly the same as this since the pandemic began. There's really no statistical change whatsoever. So, my key light is doing something that it shouldn't do. Hang on a second. You're going to see me go all weird focus here. Let's see if I can keep it doing that. I've got one of those cool new circular key lights, and unfortunately it was sliding down to rest on top of my camera, which is a bad place for it because it means that my camera might do something weird. So I would mention that as of this afternoon, the Center for Disease Control here in the United States has lifted the orders for fully vaccinated people. CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky opined, anyone who is fully vaccinated can participate in indoor and outdoor activities, large or small, without wearing a mask or physical distancing. If you are fully vaccinated, you can start doing the things that you had stopped doing because of the pandemic. We have longed for this moment when we can get back to some sense of normalcy. Yet here in Lincoln, Nebraska, our mask order remains in effect until May 23rd and will probably be extended again as it has for the last 6 months, etc. I would also note that just about 5 hours before I went on, and I just caught it before I went on here, President Biden tweeted the following, although I'm sure he didn't write it. The rule is now simple. Get vaccinated or wear a mask until you do. The choice is yours. Oh, President Biden. That kind of dictatorial statement is precisely why the United States has a Second Amendment. It's really unfortunate that people now prefer to live on their knees rather than to die on their feet. I'm also wondering, how do you prove if you're vaccinated? Drop of Truth says, let's see, AC3D, Bill, scary. Yes, I know. As the Drop of Truth on YouTube is saying, Schrodinger's cat equals unknown. What metaphysical gobbledygook posing as science. They don't call it Schrodinger's cat. I do that because I don't know what that classification means. So, the people who are in that amongst that group, I don't know what it means. I just call it Schrodinger's cat, both dead and undead simultaneously. I'm still trying to figure out how it is you're going to prove you're vaccinated, right? I mean, if I go into a store, because being retired, I don't go to a workplace. I can imagine a workplace, saying, show us your card before we'll let you in. But I don't have a workplace. How are they going to know? I mean, if I just tell them I've been vaccinated, will that be adequate? Or what if I forged my vaccine card? I've seen them. My mother has one. Given all these cool artwork and stuff that I do using vector level art that can be exported to any resolution, in this case, exported out to 4K, even though you only see it in 1080p, I can imagine. I've looked at them. Oh, it would be a simple matter indeed to forge them. I keep wondering, I've always had ethics. Maybe it's time to get rid of my ethics and start going into the forging business. I don't know. Drop of Truth on YouTube says, the greediest and most narcissistic comment I've ever heard from a young adult is this: my parents just bought a new car. Don't they realize they're spending my inheritance? Yeah. I wish that was entirely just young people thing, but it's not. I've got a relative. If I know someone close to my children who has felt the same thing about her father's inheritance for quite some time, and she's of my generation, so. There'll probably be a hefty sentence for fraud cards, maybe, but I'm not sure how you'd know. I mean, there's a barcode on the back. I'll find out what the barcode means, but I don't. And the weird thing about it is, too, right? Okay, so you've had the injection, or you've had the virus, and you're probably not going to get it again. Or like me, there is no possibility that you've ever been exposed to it. I mean, for me, it's impossible, right? Despite what I look like on here, I'm actually pretty introverted, and I stay at home almost all the time. I go out very rarely. There would be no way that I would ever have been exposed to it, so I'm in no danger of carrying it. So, what? If you've got the vaccine, you've had the virus, you are safe from me, I am safe from you. I am unlikely to ever give it to anyone. Who cares? I don't see any reason I shouldn't go out. But if I was going to go into that business, it certainly looks like a perfect time to do it, what with President Biden being all dictatorial. Anyway, going to have another call here with my resident cryptocurrency expert and sometime producer, J. Marshall Presnell. We had a lengthy conversation last week. This one isn't going to be quite as long. We had a lengthy conversation last week about cryptocurrency and some of how it works and where it's going. And today, I believe, Elon Musk appears to have intentionally tanked the cryptocurrency market. And I asked Marshall to come on. He said he would. So let me give Marshall a yell here if I can find my correct window. I have so many windows open, you would not believe. So let me see if I can get Marshall on the horn here. And we will talk to him. Hey, Marshall, how's life treating you today? Hello. Well, maybe I turned him off.
Hello.
Yep, there he is. Sorry, I turned you off by mistake. We'd had a test call about a half an hour, 45 minutes ago, and I got a button that turns on the caller, and I had it turned off. So, anyhow, how are you doing this, Marshall?
Doing well. How about you?
Oh, I can't complain. As usual, never helps when I do. So,
it's been
crypto.
An day.
I guess Elon Musk went and stopped accepting cryptocurrency with his electric car business. And this has basically tanked cryptocurrency.
Yeah, yesterday, I don't remember exactly when, about 6 p.m. Eastern time, he tweeted, that Tesla would no longer be accepting Bitcoin because he was worried about the ecological damage that mining Bitcoin was causing. But he's going to keep all of his crypto, and they're not selling it.
Right.
So it's like the ultimate mixed message. And people reacted. Well, you've got the slide. Show them how they reacted.
Yeah, let me show you. This is a logarithmic. Oops, wrong one. Sorry.
Oh,
let me find
the first one.
The damn thing
nope,
here.
Not that
The
one.
logarithmic one.
No. No. The very first one, the one with all the annotations on it.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Do you mean the graph, or do you mean the?
You had it right.
This one.
Oh, I got to see it. No.
Okay.
The graph.
The logarithmic one or the
no
other one? Sorry.
Oh boy,
we got a couple of graphs.
We are having some communication things here. The graph that has the annotations on it with the arrows on the top.
I believe that's this one.
Yes, that one.
Okay. We tried to set this up before, and as usual, I made a mess of it. So, yes, you can see the graph here.
Okay, this is the minute chart. So each one of the little candlesticks you see there are 1 minute. Elon tweeted at 6:08 p.m., and that's the vertical line on the left, right.
The blue one.
To the right of the Mugatu.
Mm-hmm.
Handsome beast, that is. And an hour and 57 minutes later is the low that it hit from this. And you'll notice it went down $8,793, or a 16% dump from one tweet. And of course, the entire cryptoverse went nuts. What's Elon doing? He's tanking crypto intentionally, blah, 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 blah. Well, I'll tell you, he was doing what he did intentionally, but it had nothing to do with crypto.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
But just as one additional thing here, we measure slope in a financial sense by number of units per period, so like dollars per minute.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look from the upper left-hand intersection where it was at when he tweeted to the lower right-hand wick, which is that arrow at the bottom, that was about $75 a minute slope.
Yeah, I
Negative.
can see. You can see the red lines getting longer and longer as it goes down.
Well, no, I mean
That-
from the top to the bottom is $75 a minute.
Yeah.
A lot of people were saying, this is it, this is it, this is the end, this is the end. When the end comes, it's upwards towards $200 to $400 a minute.
Hmm.
So this is normal. It's just
Okay.
a normal reaction to Elon tweeting and people jumping to conclusions. And that is the key takeaway. There's nothing wrong with Bitcoin. There's nothing wrong with Ethereum. Nothing wrong with the market. It's people panic selling.
Right. Yeah.
Here's what he was actually trying to do. Show the
the other
URL that I gave you.
Yep.
Okay, this is a exclusive to Reuters. It was released yesterday at noon. Tesla seeks entry into U.S. renewable fuel credit market. Sources. I love sources. They're never wrong. But basically, what they're trying to do is get into a credit system with the government where, because they use renewable sources entirely, they can get tens of billions of dollars of credit and basically profit.
Right.
And you'll notice it is Tesla, and he mentioned Tesla specifically.
Yeah.
You know, SpaceX is involved, Boring Company is involved, but he mentioned Tesla.
Right.
So yesterday between 12 and 6 p.m., closer to 6, so it could be anywhere between like 4 and 6 p.m., Tesla removed all of its Bitcoin acceptance stuff from its website. And there was a delay as it percolated through the content delivery network. And about 6 p.m., that's when Elon had it confirmed. Okay, it's out. Now we can announce it. He did that because he was being hounded by environmental groups, and they were making a big stink about how energy terrible Bitcoin is, which is a completely invalid
Ridiculous
narrative.
Yeah.
But
it's utterly ridiculous. If you know the first thing
doesn't-
about technology, you know that Bitcoin mining isn't like it's nothing. It's absolutely nothing.
if you took all the Bitcoin miners in the world and stuffed them into the space of Las Vegas, it would have less energy than Las Vegas.
Yeah.
So
you want to stop people using energy, stop gamers from gaming.
or people from driving Teslas.
Yeah,
You know,
or people driving
they're
Teslas for
electric.
that matter. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I
But
get a big kick out of the fact that not everybody knows this, but I mean, these stupid government, credits that you get, largely being held by people making ethanol. Mix 2.5 gallons of gasoline to make 1 gallon of ethanol.
Which means
How-
you have to have 2.5 gallons of gasoline.
Right. Yeah. Instead of just one. It's ridiculous. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said it's a gallon and a half. It's not 2.5. It's a gallon and a half. But you still have to have half a more gallon of gas to make 1 gallon of ethanol than if you just burned the gas.
And it's less fuel dense. So
Yeah,
or
exactly.
energy dense,
Way
I should
less
say.
fuel dense. Yeah. So you'll go farther on a tank of gas than you would on ethanol. Yeah.
Right. So that's the big news, and the market completely zonked out and panicked,
Yeah.
which means something very, very good for the smart people.
Yeah. By
It's
now.
discount time. It's dollar store time.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is now down under 50 or right at 50 right now, which means it's also at its 21-day exponential moving average, and it's just slightly under its 20-day simple moving average, which needs to be retested every time you're in a bull market for crypto. It's been tradition. It's been historical that way. So when it dips below it and you're not in a cycle top, it's time to rake it in. And I do plan on going in and doing some dumpster diving for Bitcoin.
Yeah, not financial advice, by the way.
No, it is not financial advice. If you believe
But
some random person on the internet, you deserve what you get. So, you're entitled to my opinion, but if you take it, that's your fault. So,
yeah,
um,
yes, I
but
wouldn't go.
this
If you want to go and forge, your vaccine certificate, don't do it because I said so.
that's not career advice.
Yeah, not career
Yes,
advice.
definitely not. Um, but whenever something like this happens, the very, very, very first thing I do is I look at a chart, and this is the log chart of the growth of crypto,
Let me.
of Bitcoin, and specifically. You got
I'll
that
put
up?
that one up.
Oh no, it's coming up. What's this? How good my technical director is. Look
Should
at
be the
that.
log one.
That is the logarithmic growth chart of Bitcoin since its inception. The far left corner is basically around 2010. This is a monthly chart, so every one of those lines is a month. Also note, I don't use traditional candlesticks. I use something called Heiken Ashi candlesticks, which my my AI prefers Heiken Ashi, so I've just gotten to the point where I'll use it. This is the logarithmic chart, and this shows the various different market cycles. You got one in between 2011 and 2012. You got another one at 2014. You got another one about late 2017. You got a little tiny one in 2020, and now we're where we are.
Yeah.
But humans, although we're designed to process logarithmic data, our brain in its linear mode shows you a much different picture, and Bill has that different picture. This is what happens in linear mode. This is what
that's the previous crypto price drop one. This one?
I don't know. I can't see it yet.
Yes, it'll be there momentarily.
No,
The
no,
one
no,
we're
no, no,
using-
no.
No?
The one that looks like an inflation curve.
Well, I maybe don't have that one then. My bad.
Oh yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
Oh,
I saw it earlier.
Well, the one I had was the same log one we were looking at before. I got two pictures, that logarithmic one and then the linear price drop one. What looks like the linear price.
Oh, okay. If you look at this though on a linear scale,
Okay.
Basically it looks like a flat line all the way up to 2012, and that's because the scale on the right is literally $1 1 pip basically. Right now it's $10 1 pip, or 10 to 1. If you look at it on a linear scale, it doesn't move until somewhere around 2012, and then you see that little tiny pip there, 2012. I'm sorry, 2018. And then you see it going almost asymptotic at the end.
Oh, okay. I don't have that one. I'm sorry.
Oh, I might not have given it to you. My fault. But those are the two charts that keep me centered about where we are, what we're doing, and how strong this is.
Right.
The strength of Bitcoin is incredible. The fundamentals are very simple. Even a president could understand them if he bothered. 21 billion coins, no more.
And
I figured out how to increase the number of coins, Bill. I figured out how to increase the number of coins and not lose value.
What's that?
Stock split. Split. Yeah. You have 21 million coins. We say, okay, effective day after tomorrow, we have 63 million coins and the price gets cut in thirds. Now people have more to trade.
Right.
Stock split. Very simple.
Can you do that with a blockchain?
Yeah, you can. It's fairly simple to do it with a blockchain, but it requires a 90% consensus of the miners. And they would probably go for it because that would mean that there's more transactions, there's more Bitcoins to transact. But that's the way you do it without losing value.
Oh, okay.
So not financial advice, but get your asses out of dollars and into something else, whether it be Bitcoin, real estate, whatever. Just get out of dollars.
As
again,
they are
not financial advice.
Sitting there inflating the thing like mad this year.
Yeah, the half-life of a dollar just went to about 4 years.
Yeah.
and that's pretty bad.
Yep.
So
They have been
that's about
pumping
it, Bill.
money into the dollars into the money supply since last year and accelerated it badly this year, which means what it takes more to, more money to buy the same thing as it did 2 years ago, etc. So,
Right.
yeah.
Last year's I could understand. They shut everything down. They had to get liquidity to people, and it mostly went to people,
Hmm.
and it also went to small businesses. And that made sense to me. You're investing in yourself, essentially.
Okay.
What they're doing now is suicide.
Yeah. Well, when you have a debt that's greater than the gross domestic product of the country, you got two choices: default or inflate the currency.
Yeah, our
They've
current
chosen
debt to
the latter.
GDP. Our current debt to GDP is about 130%, I think, right now.
Yeah.
That's not able to be sustained. They
Yeah.
can't push up interest rates because then the cost of servicing the debt becomes greater than the cost of the Defense Department.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Just the
you know,
interest on the debt. Yeah.
yeah.
No, they've
So
chosen to go with inflation to devalue the dollar and thereby make the debt worth less.
but that's the suicide run. The only
Yep.
way you can stop this now is deflate the currency and literally burn money.
Yeah.
Bring it in. The only problem is they ain't going to do that.
Right.
So
No, they're not going to do that.
My opinion, totally here, we're pretty much screwed. Get your ass out of the dollar.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I can't disagree. Yeah. Again, not financial advice.
nope.
Sound advice.
So
Okay.
that's
Well,
about it for me. I'll not
appreciate you
dominate
being
your
on,
entire
Marshall.
show.
I will probably let you drop off here, and I'll answer some questions that are piling up on the YouTube side of the chat here. So,
Okay, I'll
thank
stay
you for-
in if there's any questions for me.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you for being on, as always.
Have a good one. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. Okay, let's go back up and look at a few of my chat here. Up. Let's see, on the YouTube side, Drop of Truth is saying Elon Musk is an NWO shill. One doesn't become a billionaire by playing by the rules. I think it's hard to do in today's society because government is so badly into everything that they're basically passing laws all the time to keep new business out, to make competition harder and harder. So I think that's sort of the deal. In internet businesses, when the rule is the first one who gets there wins. It's just that simple. The first one who gets there wins, and he won. And so now I'm sure, I haven't looked, but I'm sure there are laws that have been passed that make it much more difficult for Joe Average to try to get in and compete with them. Also over on the YouTube side, Drop 2 says, where do Tesla cars get the electricity? Mostly from coal-powered plants and occasionally hydroelectric. Yeah, almost exclusively coal-powered. If they really wanted to do something for the environment, then they would go nuclear. It's just that simple. Replace coal and, fossil fuels and, for the most part, frankly, hydro and solar with nuclear. It's cheap, it's clean, and it's very, very reliable. All you have to do is make sure you don't put it on a fault line or something like that. Go out to, the middle of Wyoming and put a whole bunch of them out there. If the only thing happens there is if the Yellowstone caldera blows, and if that happens, the first thing that'll happen is that those things get wiped out by pyroclastic flow within the first minute or so. So the whole problem sort of takes care of itself. Drop 2 says Tesla Cars Inc. is at least 60% government subsidized. Some have speculated it's over 80. I don't know. All I know is that it is a non-viable business without government help. We're seeing some, I've forgotten what the amount was, something like 30% of people who've bought an electric car have gone back to fossil. It is useless where I live. It's only good in major metro areas. Get it out and you're done. It's useless for agricultural work because it's for many reasons that I could go over. I've done it before. I can do it again. But it's useless. It's utterly useless. It's only good in major metro areas. Supercruise63 on the YouTube side, today's modern engines run so clean we don't need the ethanol, and ethanol causes some materials to break down in your fuel system. Yes, it's just bad. To be honest, I wish that my Jeep were running on diesel. But yeah, ethanol is stupid. Most people don't really know that it takes more gasoline to make ethanol than it does just to have the gas. You know, it's stupid. They go, oh, ethanol, it's environmentally clean, except that you have to use more gas to make it than you would if you just use a gallon of gas. You know, it's stupid. Drop Truth over there is also saying my four-wheel drive runs on petrol to attain its optimum operating heat and then switches to LPG. Yeah, I've got the only time I've seen anything that was any kind of hybrid was my sister had one for a while. She may still. That ran electric unless you got it up to a certain speed, and then it went to conventional engine. Drop Truth says Elon Musk's grandfather, Joshua Haldeman, was part of the Canadian technocracy movement in the 1930s to the point of being brought to trial after technocracy was banned. Well, I don't much follow his family very much. I just follow him, and the problem with him, the reason that it was such a big splash when he did this with Bitcoin, was partly because he'd been championing it for so long, and partly because for some bizarre reason people tend to think of him as the real life Tony Stark, which he's not. His SpaceX program is great. Tesla is not economically viable on its own. He has yet. Do you remember the Hyperloop? Anybody remember the Hyperloop? Scientific impossibility for any number of reasons. Great guy on YouTube, Thunderfoot, who is a scientist who works with vacuum chambers, goes through and has on many, many videos gone through and debunked the stupid things. It's ridiculous. So he's got a lot of stuff going on that's just pointless. He had this big deal in Los Angeles about going underground and moving cars hither and yon. What he ended up doing was making a tunnel, like it was some big deal. But he hyped it, and because everybody thinks he's Tony Stark, Drop Two is saying, buy land, son. God isn't making any more of it. How much will Melinda steal from Bill? I don't know. A huge amount. Melinda and Bill Gates are getting divorced. I'm sure she'll get an enormous amount of money. As Bill Hicks has noted, there is an epidemic of gold-digging whores in the United States. Although, in reality, this is nothing new. There's a great Saturday Night Live sketch. I'll see if I can point to it when I'm done. But I will never forget the Saturday Night Live sketch because it was Jane Curtin and Dan Aykroyd doing Weekend Update and doing Counterpoint about Lee Marvin and how his then live-in companion, not even wife, was taking him for a huge amount of money. And I got in such a huge amount of trouble because there's a great line in there. I won't speak it because you need to see the context for it to be really funny and the delivery for it to be really funny. But I will link to it after I'm done my the stream. But I got in a lot of trouble because that came out when I was in junior high school, what they call middle school now. And I said it not knowing what one of the words meant. And I got in a ton of trouble because I said it to some girl, Again, I'll link to it. It's great. It's very funny. Let's see. And by the way, Drop of Truth. As always, I learn most of what I know from science fiction. Lex Luthor, his father told him to always invest in land because people are bad, people are good, but they will always pay through the nose for land. Remember, my son, land. Let's see. Drop Two is asking, when has AOC predicted the end of the world? Let me see if I have that. Yes. AOC, Red Cortez, has predicted the end of the world. She predicted that a couple of years ago. She said we've only, a couple of 3 now. She said we only had 12 years until the end of the world, and that it's our, the current generation's World War II, and all of this nonsense. So there's websites out there that will show you the countdown to the end of the world as predicted by Red Cortez. She did in fact say 12 years. We're now just over 9 years at 3,539 days, 22 hours, 24 minutes, counting down from 25 seconds to death. Drop of Truth is saying ethanol is viable in Brazil since they produce so much sugar cane there. Making ethanol from corn is just stupid. That's the other thing that most people, when they aren't in rural areas, don't understand. You use corn or any crop like that to make your ethanol. Well, not only are you using more gasoline to make the ethanol than you would have if you just had the gasoline, but you're also driving up the price of corn for the most part. The price of corn would be less if people weren't using it to waste making ethanol. That's just the reality of it. If you use it, it's supply and demand. You use up some of the supply, making ethanol that can only be justified by having government bailouts to do it. Well, you're going to drive up the price of corn on the market, just the way it is. Drop Truth is on the YouTube side is saying Elon Musk has never invented everything. He is an entrepreneur, nothing more. Well, I wouldn't say that. And as Marshall's saying on the YouTube side, entrepreneurs provide vision, guidance, coordination, structure, and capital so that others can work their vision. Yes, Marshall is an entrepreneur. He's an incredibly smart guy. You couldn't have Amazon, without Elon Musk, saying, hey, this is a service that people need. You wouldn't have Amazon Web Service, which is used by an enormous number of people, myself included, without, him saying, this is a product we need. Sure, he didn't sit down and do all the work necessary for Amazon or Amazon Web Services, but he's the guy who, came up with the idea. Steve Jobs, as is often pointed out, the guy never sat there and soldered together a phone, but he said, this is what we need. There's a market need for this thing. And then hired the people, provided the money, etc., to get it done, to bring that to life. There's nothing wrong with that. Drop of Truth on YouTube is saying, I'm merely stating that Elon Musk is not an inventor. Being an entrepreneur is beneficial. Bezos, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of the wrong person. Either way, you couldn't have SpaceX without Elon Musk saying we need to have SpaceX. This is what I'd like to see happen. Now, he spits out ideas. Near as I can tell, what he does is he spits out ideas like a shotgun, see what happens to stick. And he's got less things that stick than you would think. Again, who remembers the Hyperloop? Anybody? Anybody remember the Hyperloop? Go to Mars equals Elon. Well, yes, go to sell compute services goes to Bezos. You're absolutely right. But they're both entrepreneurs, like Steve Jobs. They didn't do any of the actual sitting down work, but I've worked for enough companies, on the tech side to know, the president of the banks that I've worked for, they never sat down and did the banking. But they provided the guidance and the vision and everything that we needed in order to do things so that we could make the software that, runs the internet, more or less. So I don't give those guys any bad rap. But yes, our good friend Alexandria Ocasio-Red Cortez has, in fact, suggested that the end of the world will come in 12 years after she did it, which is roughly 9 years and 22 months at this point. That being said, Drop of Truth is saying SpaceX is rebranded NASA, also government subsidized. Well, they buy government stuff from them, no question. But SpaceX is doing some things that are relatively revolutionary. I've watched Thunderfoot's videos debunking it, and I think he's right on a certain level. But on another level, I far prefer to see private businesses doing space exploration than I do the government, because government has been working on the getting into, significantly into space for longer than I've been alive, quite a bit longer. And NASA has always been saying, oh, it's just another 10 years and we'll be back on the moon. Another 15 years, we'll be back, we'll be on Mars, blah, 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 blah. And the date keeps moving out, moving out, moving out, moving out. Nothing ever happens. So with a private business, I would like to see multiple private businesses trying to go to space, competing with each other to get there as quickly as possible. Because I think that's probably the only way it's going to happen. If government's going to do it, it's never going to happen. It's just that simple. So, I was going to talk about, in fact, and this is partly the deal, why your children want you dead. It's a little bit clickbaity, but not as much as you would think. Marshall on YouTube is saying, SpaceX is doing things that will paradigm shift the entire space industry. Make no mistake, no government agency could accomplish it due to the way things have always been. Yeah. Watch For All Mankind on Amazon Prime is more realistic. Well, you keep telling me about that. I'll find For All Mankind someplace. But in terms of your children wanting you dead, it was an interesting deal because, forever I have been like, why? Why does The Last Jedi, Star Wars The Last Jedi, appeal to anyone? Because, in my opinion, it's a sucky movie. I don't have much else to say about it than that. It's a sucky movie that, screws up Luke Skywalker's character. But then I happen to be in various conversations, and it's just over the years now, and it's finally kind of stuck with me why it is. I happened to have a conversation on Twitter. It was a while back, before, this just kind of hit me this week. But I had a conversation with a woke idiot on Twitter who was, I was saying, it's a bad idea to go to the South and rip out Confederate monuments, because then it disappears from history and you never learn from it. You go to Europe, they're not ripping out all of the medieval castles and stuff that were involved in all kinds of horrible things. Germany maintains Auschwitz as, the worst concentration camp, maintains it as a museum. They're not out there ripping it out and tearing it down to forget about it. Here we're ripping down Confederate monuments. They're getting around to non-Confederate monuments, getting around to tearing down Columbus, taking Columbus holidays out of various places. And I got to talking with this guy, and I realized he said, if you want to make a new society, you have to get rid of the old one. And I told him, well, no, that's not how it works. Every new society is built on the ashes of the last one. And if you rip everything out, then you're going to lose that history. And if you do not know your history, you are doomed to repeat it. I mean, that's why we have socialism going on in the United States, because people have forgotten the history of socialism. They can't look around them in the world to see what's happening with it. And they believe that we need to rip out. They don't know. They don't have any of the historical background. They were never taught it because my generation failed them with their education. And so they think that it's going to work when it's not, clearly. Communism and socialism always fail, killing millions in the process. Over on the YouTube side, Marshall says, FYI, woke idiot can just be abbreviated to just woke, yes. Drop of Truth says, The Last Jedi is an emotional tripe masquerading as sci-fi, subverting expectations, is only an excuse for awful writing. And anyway, KK is out and Gina is back. Welcome, Favreau and Filoni. I've heard all of those things until such time as I actually see it happening, because I've got lots of people on YouTube who peddle that sort of information. And I don't pay any attention to it until I actually see it happening. They say, oh, Kathleen Kennedy is out. Well, I haven't seen anybody, saying so long we're, not renewing your contract or anything. So until that happens, I don't necessarily take it for, permanently. And the same thing with Gina. This all seems to be accurate, but until such time as I actually hear that she started shooting, I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. But that wasn't for me the big thing about Last Jedi. I think that the reason that people, especially the woke, really, associate with the Last Jedi, can really get into it, is because of one simple line that Kylo Ren says: "Let the past go, kill it if you have to." And that was consistent with multiple conversations, not just that one, with that one individual who was saying, well, if you wanted to have a new society, you have to completely plow under and get rid of the previous one. Not understanding. I keep trying to tell them, no, if you do that, you don't learn from your history. If we destroy Auschwitz, if we bury it under the ground and demolish it and build a parking lot there, then we have just destroyed a piece of history that was so horrific that we need that thing to stand forever so that we don't do it again. And I hear this over and over and over from people. We got to tear it down and destroy it. Drop of truth. How are the CW ratings? I'll get to that in a second. I can get to that in a minute. But a lot of this also too boils down to what you're seeing here. The fact that my generation, and frankly the one that preceded us, failed our children, failed millennials, failed post-millennials by not giving them an education. God knows, I talk about this all the time on this show. Me and education have a long history. I talk about it all the damn time. Today's high school graduate can neither read nor write nor perform the most basic math. They have never read the Constitution. They were never taught the Constitution. They were never given any level of history. So they don't know. All they know is what they've been brainwashed to know. And their brainwashing tells them that because of my generation and the ones that preceded it, they're going to die in 9 years, 22 months, 13 minutes, 3,539. I need to move that over here so it doesn't look like I'm looking way off screen. Now, where do I need to move it? Here. Okay. 3,539 days, 22 hours, 12 minutes, and some odd number of seconds. They believe that they're going to die then. They've been told that. Red Cortez has said it specifically. They think that it was an avoidable disaster caused by myself and prior generations. This is part of the reason, because it's normal. It's totally normal for every generation to rebel against the one prior. But I have never seen it like it is with this generation. It's not just rebellion. It's not just doing stuff like, if you watch 1960s Dragnet, like I do, half the time, it's some message to hippies of that era about, how they just don't know, and, this rebelling they're doing is counterproductive. But this is beyond rebelling. This is way beyond that. It's a level of hatred and hostility towards the preceding generation that I have never seen before. I don't think it has existed in prior history. They believe that they're going to die. They have been taught this over and over. They have been brought up in a nihilistic society, an artificially nihilistic society, with no conception that they're living in the best world that has ever existed up to this point. They believe that they are going to die. And soon, very soon. You hear some of them talking about how they don't want to have children, because why bring children into a world where they're not going to live longer than 9.5 years or so. So I think some of the hostility, some of the sheer outright hatred, I put up on for kicks. I put up on Twitter a multi-tweet, totally non-scientific thing that was 3 sets of question and answer. Do you believe that you're going to die from a preventable disaster? Yes, no. Do you believe that this preventable disaster was the cause of generations preceding yours? Yes, no. If you could execute all of the people in those prior generations, including your older siblings, your parents, your grandparents, for their culpability in what's coming, would you? Yes, no. Unfortunately, my reach is so tiny on YouTube, on Twitter, that I've not really got any useful things. But having engaged with the woke like I did over and over for the last several weeks, and their sheer hatred, their sheer seething, writhing hatred, I think there's some of them out there that if they could, they would plow us all under, because they think they're creating a new society and we are getting in the way. It's not just rebellion. It is they would just as soon see us dead. I really think that's the case. Drop a 2 saying on YouTube, today's teachers in government schools, for the most part, are equally stupid. Yes, we have reached a point, really, where the teachers themselves don't know anything, and so they can't teach anything to anyone. Have a lengthy series of videos on this, America's Broken Schools. I'm not going to terrifyingly go into it now, but I know from having taught at the college level that the high school graduates that I were getting, they couldn't read, they couldn't write, they couldn't perform the most basic math. It was really, really frustrating because as somebody who's teaching IT, try teaching binary logic and mathematics to kids who can't do regular, straight, simple up math on their fingers and toes because they couldn't. Drop 2 is saying AOC is about 21 months too early with that prediction. Well, this is from the date that she said we only have 12 years left. It's satirical. But, that's what she said, and so that's what they're going with. Drop 2 is also saying the R.E.M. song Generation is the end of the world, we know it, and imitation of life. Yeah, except that I don't think, I worried during the Cold War, because we came close at least twice during my lifetime of pushing the button. But it was a real worry because both the Soviet Union and the United States had thousands of nukes pointed at each other. We don't have that. We have something totally artificial like this, the nonsense of climate change. I mean, I get a huge kick out of it because, of course, the Earth is supposed to be burning up. But this year in particular has been incredibly mild. Well, I shouldn't say that. The winter was pretty terrible. But it's been a really mild spring, and we're headed into summer. It's getting into the 60s here, 60 degrees-ish Fahrenheit, when at this point it should be in the 70s, heading into the 80s for June when it gets to the 90s and 100s. It's been really, really mild, and it's actually been a bit problematic for ranchers and farmers because we've not had enough precipitation. It's been really mild, and there's a reason for this. It has nothing to do with climate change. It has to do with that big glowing ball in the sky. If you look at it for the last several years, it has been outputting less and less energy. It's not just Earth that's cooling down. If you look at other planets, they're cooling down a bit as well. The big glowing ball in the sky makes a lot more difference. And this is nonsensical. But that's what they've been taught. That's what they've been brainwashed. They're going to die from climate change soon. It's ridiculous. And they really do have a certain level of hatred for the people that came before them because they think that we're the ones that killed them. Greta Thunberg standing before the United Nations back when she was a prop is a good example of how they really feel, I think. How dare we do what we've done to them? We've sentenced them to death, and I think they really hate us for that. Dalton Bridges says kids are literally exposing their parents online as racists to get them fired. Yeah. It's something we haven't seen since Nazi Germany, when children were encouraged to, and for that matter, communism in the Soviet Union, when children were encouraged to turn in their parents. And that's what we've got now. They have been so proselytized, so brainwashed by a system that does not in any way educate them, but instead just feeds them BS. It does not educate them at all. It simply tells them that they're going to die soon. And unless we turn all of our freedom over to government, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. The only thing we can do right now is turn over all our freedom so the government will fix the problem. It's ridiculous. Drop 2 says it's also mentioned in 1984. Yes, clearly a very prophetic novel. So that's my general thinking. We are at a point where it's a dangerous moment for us because our children are very brainwashed, hate our guts, and probably would to a large extent. I don't know that. I mean, some of them might just soon see their parents dead, but strangers, people who are Gen X and boomers that are still around, they'd probably just as soon see us dead. Maybe not if it was personal, but I think they'd just as soon see us dead. It is a very, very frightening thing to some extent. Because they're starting to take the reins of power. That is one thing that they really should never be allowed to do. You should never vote, unfortunately, for a millennial or a post-millennial, because if they get the reins of power, bad things will happen. So, that's sort of out of the way. Gotta talk about the... what do I got here? Nope, not that one. This one. Drop 2 says, time to roast Batwoman over the dumpster fire that it resembles. I'll mention Batwoman, yes. Batwoman's ratings have been dropping like a rock. I did a spreadsheet and a chart that I can't really show you very easily. Didn't occur to me to make one up. But yes, it's dropping like a rock. It's now at the lowest that it's ever been, which is under 400,000 viewers. Wow. It started out like 1.4 at the beginning of the first season. It's just been dropping like a rock ever since. It's under 400,000. This last episode was supposed to be the last episode of the season. Unfortunately, because they're woke, and apparently they prefer putting out woke garbage rather than, making a profit, they made even more episodes. So I'm going to be watching it because I'm stupid. I'm a masochist. Actually, the main reason I watch it is so that I can enjoy other people going on about it. Heel versus Babyface is a great guy. I don't do this stuff myself anymore because I hate the show so much that, I just like, God, I can't review this every week. And people are doing it better than I do. Heel versus Babyface, Thrias Unlimited, they have some really good reviews. Basically just go through the stupid because the plots are always stupid. They're stupid and woke. And it isn't worth. The only reason I do is so that I don't lose my place when these other people are talking about the show. I can go, yeah, that really is stupid. That's weird. I just got dropped on all 3 of the platforms, but it looks like it came back. Yes, Drama Truth, 400,000 in population of 330 million. And again, it's dropped down below 400. I have to look and see what the number is. But it's like the high 300s, 300,000. It's like nobody watching it. And they've renewed it for another season. I don't get it. Apparently, it's just because they're woke. And that's the only reason. Nobody's watching this except some masochists. Even the people who watch Heel versus Babyface and Thrias Unlimited aren't watching this show. You'll see all kinds of things in their comments about thanks for taking the bullet for us. Thanks for taking one for the team so that we don't have to watch this crap. They get views for it, and unfortunately they do so well, and I could never do better than they do, so I don't bother with it anymore. And it's just painful to do any reviews of the thing. You know how much time I take in reviews. It's just painful. Unfortunately, I think it's next week or the one after, we're starting back up with Superman and Lois, which is a good show, and you will see me doing reviews for that. We've also got another season of Stargirl coming up. You're going to see that. Unfortunately, if some of the Disney shows are any good, you won't see me doing that because I now have a policy. I don't do Disney. I don't care what it is. I don't do Disney because they are supportive of an absolutely horrific regime in China that is, in fact, not like the U.S.'s southern border. They are, in fact, hauling people, religious minorities, off to concentration camps against their will. Their own citizens hauling them off to concentration camps, and they support those guys. If they had any kind of ethics, they would say, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to court that Chinese dollar. We're not going to do things like, change our posters for Star Wars movies to take Finn off of it because the Chinese are fantastically racist and they hate black people. We're not going to court that dollar. So I'm sure Finn wasn't in the last one to speak of much. Didn't have much to do because the Chinese don't want to look at him. Drop of Truth on YouTube says, you expect the Eternals to be woke garbage as well. Jack Kirby failure from its inception. Even Neil Gaiman couldn't make it interesting. The Eternals are so obscure that I know almost nothing about them. I know about them in the context of Jack Kirby was working with that. I think this is the right timeline. He wanted to do some stuff with that, didn't, moved over to DC, and that's where we got the New Gods, who, among other things, you get the big bad of Darkseid, the big bad of the entire DC universe out of the New Gods. So they're so, obscure. If they'd had any brains, really, if Marvel had any brains, they would have just said, okay, we're going to end this at the logical closure point, which is at the end of Endgame, and fade out the end. And unfortunately, they had to have shows for Disney Plus. They figured, we can still keep butts in the seats, so they're gonna run it into the ground until the butts are no longer in the seats. And that's why you get obscure stuff like the Eternals. It's just they're running it into the ground. And it's unfortunate because, people who like that franchise, like I have, will watch it go run into the ground until there's no more butts in the seats. And we'll say, what a shame. They should have just ended at the logical closure point, end of Endgame, fade out, the end, and nothing else. It's one of the things that I always have to give it to the British for. When they have a show, even if it's relatively popular. And I like to look at a show like, what is it? The cop show, something with Mars in the title. Life on Mars, right? Good show. I'm sure it had a good following. But it had a definitive end to it. Now, they did make a sequel years later, but that also had a definitive end to it. They're not going to keep this show going until nobody will watch it. They have dramatic beginnings, ends, etc. So I got to give it to the British. Sometimes they know when to, just say, that's it, fade out the end. And unfortunately, they should have faded out the end at the end of Endgame. And again, I don't really talk about the Marvel stuff very much either. They're Disney, so I can't support those guys. Drop of Truth on YouTube is saying, WandaVision ended badly. Falcon and Winter Soldier was dire, woke, and unnecessarily racist. I thought WandaVision was a show that existed to set up another movie. And it was there to set up Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. And Falcon and Winter Soldier, like all woke crap, it just totally fails to hit the mark. It was by the end, it was almost Gene Roddenberry-esque preachy. Here's how you make a statement, guys. If you want to make a political statement, you do it by not making a statement. That was something they did in the 1960s with a TV series called I Spy. It was about a pair of CIA agents, one of whom was white, one of whom was black. They made a statement by never talking about it. These guys were just partners. That was it. And no statement ever made. Star Trek, the original series. They had Japanese people, and there was a lot of anti-Japanese sentiment still back then. And a black woman. You had a Russian. You didn't talk about it. You didn't make a statement about it. They were just there. They were equals. Done. You make a statement by not making a statement. And if they wanted to make a statement about it, they should have not made a statement. Falcon and the Winter Soldier just sucked that way for me. And again, I don't see the point of that series. They should have just, at the end of Endgame, fade out the end. So, but Batwoman continues to suck. And I assume it will continue to suck. And it will continue to treat the male characters who are good people as if they're terrible for no good reason. Dropper 2 says Utopia was good. Bill you recommended. Okay, I'll take a look. John Cleese didn't want to do a second season of Fawlty Towers, but he did it. He had it written into his contract that no third season was ever to be made. Yeah. As I say, the Brits sometimes do it right. They say, okay, we're going to leave them smiling. We're not going to leave them, with a bad taste in their mouths. We're not going to run this into the ground just for the cash, even though there's some cash to be had. Drop 2 says the MIB films stole much from I Spy, Robert Culp and Bill Cosby. To some extent, yeah. And it's another place where you can make a statement without making a statement. They're just a black guy and a white guy, and they're partners, and that's that. You make the statement by not making the statement. Anyway, back on some other stuff I want to talk about. The Colonial Pipeline. Oh, my God. What a freaking nightmare. You see, if you're not aware of it, the Colonial Pipeline they said on Saturday night, this last Saturday, that they were the victims of a cyber attack involving ransomware, and they had proactively halted their pipeline operations as a result. This is a big deal. Basically, hackers had successfully compromised their networks and their computers and encrypted stuff so that they needed to pay them a ransom in order to get the decryption tool. The reason this is a big deal is because this is a 5,500-mile pipeline system that transports approximately 45% of all fuel consumed on the East Coast and runs from Texas to New Jersey. And the FBI confirmed in a statement Monday that DarkSide ransomware, this is a group DarkSide, was responsible for the compromise of the Colonial Pipeline networks. So the shutdown in this pipeline caused an immediate jump in gas prices, as well as lines, shortages, and panic buying in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, which is where Marshall is, Virginia, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Florida. The price went up as much as 25 cents, with a national average price increase of about 12 cents. And yesterday, on Wednesday, the Colonial Pipeline paid the ransom of approximately $5 million. Once they received the payment, the hackers provided them with a decryption tool to restore the disabled network. However, the tool was so slow that the company continued using its own backups to help reset the system. A spokesperson, a representative from Colonial, declined to comment, as did a spokesman for the National Security Council. And Colonial said it had begun to resume fuel shipment around 5 p.m. on Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern. So this outage was actually fairly short, but it was indicative, as someone who spent a lot of time in IT, and I suspect Marshall will continue to agree with me, that this was an IT failure of gigantic proportions on many, many levels. Dropper 2 on YouTube says, isn't it easy to patrol the civilized world? Wasn't that the plot point in Die Hard 4, Control the Civilized World? I don't know. It's easy as long as people will acquiesce, like we now do in the U.S. But this whole thing with the pipeline is evidence of just utter incompetence on so many levels. It was amazing. I've worked for large companies, right, where if you had somebody who was successful in locking computers and requiring ransomware, it would be a huge deal. Not in the respect of, an oil pipeline, that's bad. But I've worked for banks and stuff, one insurance company in particular that I remember, that if we had certain systems down, if something went down for any length of time, you would be losing millions of dollars every minute. You'd be losing millions of dollars with those systems down. You in IT, you try for, in vital systems like that, you try for what's called 9 nines. That means you're going to be up 99.99s after that, right? With almost no downtime. Zero downtime, if at all, ever humanly possible. So I've worked for companies where, nasty stuff might go down and you'd be losing millions of dollars a minute. In this case, it was much more impactful and could have been more impactful had they not paid the ransom. But the fact that these guys got in the first place is just evidence of incredible stupidity and incredible incompetence on the part of this company. The fact that they did not also able to immediately flip over to a non-infected equipment is also indicative of massive incompetence on the part of this company. The fact that they couldn't immediately go to backups that would allow them to be up quickly or no downtime is evidence of massive incompetence. Now, these are all things that, as someone who's worked in that industry, you look at and you try, it's like an IT sec thing, IT security. You say, okay, what's the worst damn thing that could happen? And we try to build systems so that the worst damn thing in the world won't happen. Well, in this case, the worst damn thing in the world happened, and on multiple levels, they were simply incompetent in terms of A, allowing it to happen in the first place, and B, not having plans in case it ever happened to make sure that they didn't, go down. If it had been any private business where I've ever worked, and if I was responsible for it, I would be out on the street, along with everybody else, probably in my department, who were too dumb to say, hey, wait a minute, we need to make sure that this is going to run. Just incredibly incompetent on so many levels. It was so incompetent. I have always thought that there would be no way that a hacker would be able, under what circumstances? I mean, I'm trying to figure this out. Under what circumstances would any network that I've ever been responsible have been open to the internet to the point where you could muck up something that vital? I've occasionally have stuff that is, connected to the internet, systems that are connected to the internet, but it's largely for remote work and stuff like that. And they would never have been able, they'd never been able to access those systems in the first place, even if they somehow got into the network. Okay, so you're on a network where people are doing everyday daily work. It would be bad, but it wouldn't compromise stuff to the point where you're shutting down your freaking oil pipeline. How do you build a system so incompetent that someone could, I can't wrap my head around just how incompetent that would be. How would you build a system where you could get in via something connected to the internet and have it be anything other than your local area network in your office that, it'd suck if they got in. They might find out some secrets, industrial espionage, but messing with the pipeline system? Good God. How utterly ridiculous. They should never have been able to touch that. I'm just trying to wrap my head around just how incompetent you have to be to let that happen, and to not be immediately prepared to deal with it. If you've got a system that's going to be connected up like that, you have to be prepared for somebody to, break in, and you have to be able to prepare to deal with it in advance. You can't deal with it after the fact. It's just mind-bogglingly stupid. Drop of Truth on YouTube is saying, how to control a civilized country 101. Limit or stop fuel? Yes. Electricity and water delivered to the masses. The country grinds to a halt within a week. Yes, you can think like Machiavelli if you want to. Absolutely. Absolutely. That, all of this stuff, like I say, is things that you think about in terms of IT security. And I'm just trying to wrap my head around the idea that they were so incompetent that they actually let this happen. It's so incompetent on many, many levels. Drop of Truth is saying on YouTube, Marshall Presnell, surely you can build a firewall that would prevent such hacks. It shouldn't have been necessary. I mean, these things should be so walled off. Yes, firewalls, but all kinds of... There are so many things that they would have to, in a network that I would design, in a system that I would design, there would be so many layers that they just never get through it. And I'd have things on it that we call honeypots, right? Which are systems that are intentionally not as hardened as they should be, so that these jackasses spend all of their time there rather than somewhere else. But again, I'm just wrap my head around how would you build this so that it'd be that stupid? Inside job dropping through the say, I doubt it. And here's why I doubt it. And this is the other half of what I was going to talk about. What you've got with these pipelines and many other businesses that do stuff like this are really basically monopolies. They control all of this oil. They control all of those states that I talked about. It's thousands of miles. They control all of it, and they are the only ones who control all of it. I have done consulting work. I think I'm outside of my NDA on this. But I won't mention the company because I'm not entirely certain. I think I'm outside of my NDA. My NDA has lapsed. But I did work for a company that you would know about if you're an American that is a monopoly. They have a monopoly on a given service. And when I was doing consulting work for them, the amount of money that they were wasting on a monthly basis would pay for many, many, many businesses, large and small. Just on IT, that's what they were wasting every month. Millions of dollars. Tens of millions of dollars they were wasting every month. And it's not the first time I've seen that happen. I've worked for I was with AT&T before they basically were, it was after divestiture when they were broken up, but when they were still a monopoly to some extent in given areas and stuff like that. And they turned, they did AT&T before divestiture which is when they broke up into the smaller companies that have now been absorbed by 2 or 3 players, basically AT&T, Verizon, and Sprint. But they used to have a whole bunch of them that eventually got absorbed into these 3. But when AT&T was the only company, when it was the phone company, and everybody just called it the phone company, they were well known because you couldn't even install a new phone. You couldn't put an extension in your house. You had to call the phone company. They would send somebody out to run the wiring and put that in. They owned the phone. If you fracked up the phone, if you broke the phone, you got to pay a fine. And if you wanted to get attention from these guys, it was damn near impossible. They were a monopoly. They didn't have to worry about customer service, and so they didn't. And I was with AT&T towards the tail end of before they were really a big player in the cellular mobile phone world. I was there at the tail end of it, and I had internally, just me dealing with AT&T for services that we had to have, I was setting up networks between various AT&T manufacturing facilities. And so because it was AT&T, because they ran all of these leased lines that we were doing, I would have to deal with AT&T in order to get them. An employee dealing with the company, trying to get these lines, they were complete a-holes. Any other company in the universe, if you call the wrong extension, you say, yeah, I was wanting this, and they go, oh, okay, I think it's this extension here, or let me send you back to the receptionist. These guys were like, no, I think it's this number, call that, goodbye. And that was the best of it. That was the best of working with them. When you have monopolies like these guys, they no longer have to worry about things like security, right? They don't have to worry about customer service. They don't have to worry about the security. They can waste tens of millions of dollars. I bet the pipeline guys, Colonial Pipeline, waste hundreds of millions a month. I bet because they're just swimming in the dough. It's all coming into them. They don't have to worry so much. They don't have to. If you have multiple private businesses competing for business, then they have to worry about things like security, about how efficient that they run, because, okay, we have to worry about getting more customers. What happens if we lose them? We have to worry that our systems are running as efficiently as humanly possible. We have to worry that nobody's going to come out from the outside. We all have to worry about that because we're competing with other people. If we frack up, we're going to lose a whole bunch of customers to somebody else. But no, this is a monopoly. What this says to me is that we should break up this monopoly. They are a monopoly. It says to me we should break them up. Now, I don't know for sure how you break them up, but you need to break it into pieces so that they're now competing with each other. Otherwise, they're just going to do this again. They're just going to be stupid and do it again. Drop a tooth is saying, Rockefeller Oil. Yeah. Am I talking about Enron? No, I'm talking about the Colonial Pipeline. They are a monopoly. They're a monopoly for getting this oil halfway across the freaking country. And let me go back and I'll read you off the states. The states that they do most of the East Coast. And this line runs all the way from Texas for Christ's sake, to New Jersey. I mean, that's literal. That's got to be 3,000 miles. And they were dealing with shutdowns in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Florida. Most of those are pretty large states. You could, not gigantic. It's not like Montana. It's not like Texas and stuff, but they're big states. I mean, most people around the world, don't understand that a lot of countries could fit into many of our states. They are a monopoly, and the only way really to deal with this is to break them up, because they're just going to keep on being incompetent. I have seen it over and over. They can afford to waste hundreds of millions of dollars every month because they're going to get their income. They're going to get it. It's a foregone conclusion. We are going to get our money. So it doesn't matter beyond a certain point how much we spend. We're still going to get our money. You have to have competing businesses so that they are fighting for the customer's money. They have to do things in a better way. And if, you had a competing business like this, that means that if they shut down their pipeline, everybody's going to go over to somebody else's pipeline, preferably many people's pipelines, and they're going to go bust. Those are the things that you have to worry about with a private business, where you don't have to worry about it with a monopoly. You can spend as much money as you want and be as stupid as you want, because it doesn't matter. You're still going to get your money. Drop a truth is saying, look at how inefficient socialist/communist governments with all government-controlled primary industries function in pre-Putin Russia. Absolutely. It happens anywhere you get communism and socialism. They always fail, killing millions in the process. And any time that the government gets control of something, it no longer matters. They don't, it's the reason that our tuition in the United States is so high. Because the federal government backs all the loans. If you've got the government backing all the loans, that means that the banks will always get their money. It doesn't matter how much the tuition is, the bank's going to get their money. And if the bank's going to get their money, then the universities and colleges are going to get their money. So they don't have to care. They can run up the price all they want, and whether you make it through a program or not, they're still going to get their money. Back when I was going to college, when my father was going to college, the federal government didn't back those. And the price of tuition was reasonable. My father went through college, got all the way through his PhD by working at a gas station, that part-time. You couldn't do that. It'd be impossible today. But they don't have to care, because they're going to get their money no matter how high the tuition is. It's the same thing with, to some extent, with medicine. Part of the reason our medicine is so high is because our government has so many regulations and covers so many things that we no longer have any actual competition. And without competition, run the price up. And Drop 2 says, without competition, there is no need for improvement and innovation. Yes, I think, in all honesty, that the telecommunications industry would have taken off a lot sooner had AT&T not been the monopoly. If they'd not been a monopoly, if there had been, Look what happened after they stopped being a monopoly. Everything exploded in terms of telecommunications. Everything exploded. Inside of the 30 years or so, the last 30 years I was in the industry, it all exploded. And that's because they had to compete. Even AT&T, eventually, after I stopped working for them, had to worry about their bottom line. Had to worry about, hey, wait a minute, when people call us and we tell them, go call this number, frack off, it just drives them away. They actually had to worry about that and make their customer service better. So that's what we have here. We have a monopoly that needs to be broken up. I think there's probably a number of different oil companies that suffer from the same problem. We need to get them broken up. And the worst thing about it was watching Energy Secretary talk about it during a press conference, and I only watched it briefly. But some idiot, propagandist press person said, "Is this going to help move, towards a, emissionless country like President Biden does?" And she was like, just practically giddy. Said, "Yeah, we, anything that helps us move." And I'm like, "You dolt! There's all these people who are suffering because of this, and all you can think of is, oh boy, this is another step in the right direction." Step in the right direction, you morons, is to break up this monopoly. You should never have monopolies anywhere for anything. When you do, innovation is stifled and stupidity starts to run rampant. And this one was just a crap load of stupid involved. So, I could do a woke report this week, but frankly, the other stuff that I had interested me more. And I don't really feel like doing a woke report, so I'm not going to do a woke report. The woke have certainly done a lot of stupid, but the woke always do a lot of stupid, and it's occasionally difficult for me to even keep up with all the stupid that they're doing. I would mention one thing. Writer Jerry Conway, I think it's Jerry Conway. Let me make sure that I'm getting it right. He was a very major player in comic books for so long. Yeah, Jerry Conway. He may still be doing work. I don't know, but he created a lot of comic book characters that you would probably know. Let me see. He did some work on Spider-Man. He created the Punisher. A number of different things. He was a fixture at DC Comics for a long time, did a lot of their books, and he co-created Power Girl. Now, Power Girl is an interesting... Let me get this thing back plugged onto my browser here. Power Girl, if you don't know the character, this was back what we call pre-Crisis in comics, prior to Crisis on Infinite Earths, when there were an infinite number of universes and each had their own set of superheroes. And one of the things that they did was they broke out Earth 1 and Earth 2. Earth 1 was where what was now called the Silver Age comic book heroes operated. And Earth 2 was where the Golden Age superheroes operated. Now, the Golden Age superheroes came around in the 1940s, so when they got to doing comics in the modern times, the 1970s or so, these characters were older. Batman had retired, Wonder Woman was getting gray hair, Superman had gray hair, and so you had a couple of three, and Robin was an adult, so you had a couple of three superheroes that were joining what was the Justice Society of America at that time. One of them was Power Girl. Power Girl was Earth 2's version of Supergirl. The difference being that she was largely raised by Clark Kent and Lois Lane after they'd gotten married. So Power Girl was Supergirl, older than Supergirl, in fact, on Earth 1, but she was Earth 2's Supergirl. Well, Power Girl was originally drawn by Wally Wood. She was originally drawn by Wally Wood. She had very large breasts, and her costume includes a big hole right here. It shows off her cleavage. And in fact, when you heard Wally West talk about it, he was always, okay, how big can I draw her breasts before somebody says, hey, wait a minute, that's too much? So that was her thing. Even today, when she's drawn, she's a buxom lady with a big hole in her costume, that lets you see her cleavage. There's no good reason for that hole other than, to titillate male viewers, really. They've tried in-universe explanations. Well, I have the hole because male criminals will be looking there rather than watching what's about to happen to them when I'm fighting crime. But in real life, it was just a thing with Wally Wood. How big can we make her breasts before somebody at DC says, hey, wait a minute, you got to tone it down? So having said that, Jerry Conway, who was the first writer for her on All-Star Comics, I have a copy of it. I have electronic copies of it. I'm a big fan of Justice Society in the 1970s. Power Girl came back in the issue that Justice Society started running again in All-Star Comics. So Jerry Conway has come out and has said that he disapproves of manga because there's all this sexism and all kinds of it's all anti-woman and all that because manga has women with large breasts. Admittedly, I have never really spent any time reading manga. My one kid does, a big fan of it, but I have never done it myself. I mean, I've glanced at it. It's Japanese, I've seen stuff that comes out of Japan. Manga ain't the worst of it. If you want to know some of the weird stuff that comes out of Japan, I could tell you stories from a friend of mine who he and his wife spent time there. There's some weird stuff that come out of Japan. So, when you get into their anime, I mean, they have a whole subgenre called hentai, which is a lot of times rape, but done in such a way that the woman enjoys it. That's not freaking unusual. So that sort of stuff is coming out of Japan all the time. The fact that they would draw women with large breasts and revealing doesn't even remotely surprise me. But the fact that Jerry Conway, one of the guys behind a character whose breasts were getting larger and larger until somebody at DC said, no, that's too much. Him getting worried about manga breast size and saying that, it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Jerry Conway, if you're out there watching, man, remember Power Girl? You remember how you and Wally just kept going until somebody at DC said, hey, wait a minute, that's too much. In the 1970s, buddy, So if you're going to get all up bent out of shape about it, try to remember back in your own career, you moron. Hey, marketing coordinator, nice to see you. Dropping through the saying, Rockefeller monopoly of Standard Oil was broken up into ExxonMobil. It didn't work. Best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves, Lennon said. Well, I saw it work in the telecommunications industry. I think that you just have to break it up and say, we're going to tear it into pieces because it's a monopoly. That's illegal. We're going to tear it up and then step back. All the government says is you got to break it up here, here, and here and walk back and let it go. I think that'll work. I've seen it happen in the telecommunications. I mean, when divestiture happened at AT&T, it was broken into, 7 or 8 individual companies that were regional. That eventually, as cellular technology took off, they got reabsorbed and things like that. So we basically got 3 players. But those 3 players are enough. It's still keeping competition going. It's still spurring innovation. I managed. It's not a big crack. You can't really see it, but I managed to crack the phone, screen on this phone. Well, I just ordered myself, and it should arrive tomorrow. I'll show it off next week, probably. A Galaxy Fold 2. This is so cool. It's a phone that folds out into basically a small laptop, a small tablet. Really looking forward to this because I've spent you have no idea how much time I spend on this phone. The notion of having it as a tablet is really, amazing to me. And, we wouldn't have had tablets. And now I think there's going to be some competition. See who can make the best tablet. And this is the second version of it because the first one wasn't that great. And there are other companies that make folding phones now. I think this is going to become a big deal. So clearly it works. When you get into, telecom, it worked very well. Why it wouldn't work in oil, I don't know. Break it up into enough pieces and say, we're stepping back. Government just says, you got to break it up. Here's how you do it. By this date, never the twain shall meet. Step back and watch it go. Drop 2 says, Adam Hughes drew Power Girl the best. I don't really know that much about Power Girl after Wally Wood started drawing her. See, I was a giant fan of Wally Wood's when he first started drawing Justice Society because of the way he drew Superman. If you look at Superman as how he was drawn in, when he was first drawn by Siegel and Schuster, when he was first done, he was a guy that kind of had squinty eyes that opened up a bit more when he had his glasses on. And, he had a slightly different S shield, and his cape was not down to be below his knees. It was much higher. And the way that he drew Superman in All-Star Comics for Justice Society when Superman was there, and Superman wasn't there very often. He was considered semi-retired, and Wally Wood drew Superman like he was, more detailed, but like he was drawn in the early Golden Age. And he gave Superman white hair, kind of like I'm getting. He gave Superman white hair at the temples, and that's something that stuck with the character ever since. Anytime that you draw Superman older, he winds up with white hair at his temples. That's because of Wally Wood. And he drew Superman as kind of a guy with squinty eyes when he wasn't wearing his glasses. So I just got a huge kick out of that. I really liked how Wally Wood drew those characters. And I prefer his Power Girl probably to anybody's, but lots of people have drawn her ever since then. So, hey, whatever you like. Drop 2 says, the media, TV news, magazines are now owned by only 6 major companies. Diversification eventually resolves back into a monopoly. Well, when you're dealing with the press, all you're ever dealing with now is just propaganda. And I think as long as big tech doesn't screw it up, and they may, we are headed towards a point where they're all dead. That print is dying. Print is dying, and I think more and more people are realizing that it's just propaganda. It's just propaganda. Of course, it's a giant message on my show that it's always propaganda. I think you have to break it up into enough parts, and if you do that with media companies, that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing either, when there's now only 6 of them, and they clearly collude in terms of how they cover the news. It is so identical on each of them. There has to be some level of collusion, and I would go and try to get rid of that as well. Drop 2 says, Wally Wood also drew Super Duper Man for Mad Magazine. Yes, I'm familiar with some of Wally Wood's other work. He did Legion of Superheroes for a while. I really liked his Legion of Superheroes. I just generally liked Wally Wood. Marketing coordinator says, here on the cultural Marxist grapevine, they're coming out with Power Girl Transgenders. Girls, your thoughts? Yeah, I assume that it'll sell like some of the other woke crap that's come out. Yeah, I've forgotten which it was, the one that had Marvel was trying to do that had very politically correct superheroes, one that was massively overweight, that sold about 4 copies. I assume that if they're going to come out with anything like that, guys, you just have to deal with the fact that the major audience for comic books is heterosexual males. Deal. Yes, there are some women who read comics, but the overwhelming majority are heterosexual males. And if you are writing comics the right way, and I've said this when I've pitched how to fix DC Comics in both print and film, you want to aim your comic books at 12-year-old boys. You want to put them on the newsstands at the grocery checkout counters so that they can bug their mothers to get them, just like when I was a 12-year-old boy. That is a natural audience for the damn things. This whole thing with drawn-out, multi-book, lengthy and graphic novel stuff, I think is about played out. I think the comic store has just about played out. And you need to start writing comic books for 12-year-old boys. It doesn't mean they need to be bad. I mean, I don't know what the target demo was for Justice League in the DC animated universe, but it was a younger audience. That's the sort of story you can tell. Aim it at 12-year-old boys. That's the natural audience for comic books. Sorry, guys. That's the truth. And I think if you're going to go, even with older readers, they're male, they're going to not buy that crap. It's going to sell about 5 copies and drop away. Drop 2 says, Journalism 2021, rewrite Reuters and Associated Press, if you rewrite them at all, but yeah. Yes, the New Warriors, that's what it was. The New Warriors, I covered them at one point. They're such a stupid team. They sold about 5 copies, and that was that. Marketing Coordinator says, rewrite Reuters, Associated Press, Rothschild's owned. I've gone into, and again, if somebody wants me to do it at some point, throw me any story. I will walk through and show you how they've sensationalized it, how they've taken events that didn't happen and put them in, all that stuff. It's all just nonsense. There are multiple layers of how you get your news. And once you're outside of about layer 2 or 3, forget it. None of it's real. And if you ever hear something from sources close to or things like that, if they don't name their sources, my rule is if you don't have 3 named sources willing to go on the record, you shouldn't be printing anything. Just nonsense. Marketing Coordinator says, FDA just green-lighted warp speed fake vax for 12 to 16-year-olds. They won't live that long. I don't know. I don't know what the ultimate impact will be. My GP and I, who I just saw again a couple of days ago, both agree that it is inadvisable for me personally to take any medication that has not gone through rigorous testing, rigorous scientific studies for lengthy periods of time. Because I am on about 9 medications right now. I do not need an unknown drug interaction. We don't know what those are. We don't know really what the impact is on a large population. We don't know the efficacy. We don't know the side effects. When I go through the numbers here every week, it's really, really clear that despite the fact that 48% of our population has now been vaccinated, it hasn't mattered at all. We've had an ongoing downtrend since long before that vaccine was available. We vaccinated close to half the population, and it hasn't mattered. The exact same trends that we saw before are there right now. Nothing has changed. I don't think it's done the slightest bit of good. It's been totally neutral, if anything. It doesn't matter. Marketing Coordinator says 1914 Rothschilds have control of 3 European news agencies. Wolf established 1949 in Germany. Reuters established 1851 in England. And Havas established 1835 in France. As I say, I can't really, speak to anything specific. I just know that if you even go back as far, and there's a great movie, I mentioned it all the time, but I'll link to it when I'm done here in my description boxes. There's a great movie called The Front Page. If you watch the 1931 version of it. And it's a movie that's near and dear to my heart because it started out as a 1929 stage play. And I was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. When I was once an actor, I was in a mounting of that play. I played a character in it, so it's near and dear to my heart. But you can go back to the 1931 edition, and while it is absolutely, dark comedy, dark satire, it was written by 2 then contemporaneous Chicago reporters. In fact, while the movie says it's some unknown city, the play takes place in Chicago. And the behavior of all of their journalists, their reporters, are taking from these 2 authors' own personal experience. Nothing you see in the press is real. Nothing. And it hasn't been for documentary-wise about 100 years. And I assume that it goes long before then. And if you look at the Hearst newspaper syndicate, they were in part responsible for the United States getting into the Spanish-American War. They have been nothing but propagandists since day one. I know for a fact that pro-revolution newspapers and outlets in the 1770s were printing stuff that at least stretched the truth. I'm willing to bet that the slaves that were carving hieroglyphs in ancient Egypt weren't saying bad things about their masters. I'm willing to bet that if you go back to the cave paintings, when you're seeing paintings of guys going out and hunting, I'm pretty sure that those would be the chiefs, not the guy on the low end of the ladder. The press has never accurately told the truth. And to anybody to think that at some point in the past that they have, I think you're being very, very naive. They have never accurately reported the facts. And they're just outright, plain old propagandists and rank and obvious today. Dropper 2 says, don't forget Network 1976, extremely relevant today. Yes, I have a clip from Network that I dare not show because last time I did it, I immediately got a copyright strike. Marketing coordinator says, how many warp speed vaxes are there? 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know. All I know is we don't really know the efficacy of any of them. We don't know the side effects of any of them. And for me, importantly, we don't know the drug interactions. I got 8 different meds I'm on. The last thing I need is a poor interaction with one of them. So it's just not a good idea for me to take it. Not that it matters. I have never been exposed to it and don't imagine I ever will be. So let's see what time it is, about 10:45. So I think that I'm probably just going to let it go for the evening. I've got, it's been a bit over an hour and a half. Went through a lot of different stuff. Certainly, if you haven't caught me until a little bit later, marketing coordinator, feel free to catch me later on demand. And you can see some of the other stuff we talked about. Hey, Freedom Fighter 7, nice to see you tonight again. I don't think I saw you before, but if you happen to see it, go through and take a look. On demand. We talked a bit about things like the cryptocurrency thing that happened as a result of Elon Musk, some tweets of his. Talked about a number of things, different the pipeline that went kaput for several days over the week. Drop of truth around William Randolph Hearst cabled back. You furnish the pictures, I'll furnish the war. Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, he was a propagandist who helped the U.S., was largely responsible for the U.S. getting into the Spanish-American War. Nothing you see in the press is real. Nothing. It never has been. And if you want me to prove it to you, I've done it on several occasions on the show, but, at some point in a comment or something, leave me a link to a press report. Should be written, should be visual but typed, because that's easier for me to show how my methods are. And I will walk through it cold. I will not do anything except put it up here, and I will walk through it without having read it, and I will show you one of 3 things. Either that the event being reported never happened, that it didn't happen as reported, or that when you strip away emotionally loaded language, opinion, a slick interface, you wind up with a couple of 3 paragraphs at best. The last time I did it was with a weather report. They couldn't even get a weather report right. I don't think they could get a story right if it was about the local fire department getting a cat out of the tree 2 blocks down. They can't even get it right when they're trying, and they very rarely try. So again, feel free to leave a link to a press report, any source at all, in my comments, and I will debunk it live on a live stream, probably the week right after you leave it. So I guess that is all that I have to say about that. I would love to keep the conversation going, so please do leave comments, questions, and nasty remarks, and I'll do my best to respond to you. And, of course, share me on social media, because that is, in fact, how I grow. It's about the only way that I grow. So, thanks for watching this episode of Tales from SYL Ranch, where everyone is entitled to my opinion. And I'm Bill Stone.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.